Hello, everyone, and welcome to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. I'm joined this week by Mary Lynch, and a lot of you will know Mary already because she is an independent agricultural advisor specialising in organics. She's also a member of the ACA, but as well as specialising in organics and being an organic advisor, she is also farming alongside her husband, John Kavanagh. So we're going to talk about finishing cattle without using any grain whatsoever, which I know a lot of your ears will have pricked up when you've heard that, but we might also talk about some trials that are being undertaken. But Mary, we might start with a very Irish topic, which is the weather. It's very hot outside. A lot of people have noticed their grass has been burnt up. Granny came home recently and she's like, so-and-so's neighbour down the road, I won't say his name, his grass is very burnt, and I'd say he's not the only one.
Yes, I think so. And I suppose the big thing maybe is hopefully as people are seeing when they're driving around is that as organic farmers, our fields are a little bit greener
Mm.
because in general, because we're not using artificial fertilizer, our the grasses are rooting deeper, so therefore they're able to access more water as well, and that helps. And the fact then, I suppose, that a lot of the organic farmers have either gone for red clover swards or the multi-species in the last few years, the both which are much deeper rooting than even normal white clover swards, like they're staying green and they're fine at the moment. I suppose the big thing really at the moment is just to watch the topping. This is not weather to go out topping. If you have a bit of cover on the fields, just leave it alone. Even if there is some weeds in it, it's not the time to be going out with the topper, because we need that cover is helping the moisture stay in the soil. And if you top it down now, you really are going to you're going to expose the soil and it's going to dry out faster. So that's the biggest thing. But for a lot of us, I suppose, we've been talking about climate mitigation, and that's what the red clover multi-species money was there for. And we're seeing the results of it this year now. We're going to continue to have these 4 or 6 weeks periods of very dry weather. I suppose this is the hottest we've had it in a long time. But having those types of plants in your mix for your grasses really is going to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, our best field is definitely the one that we oversowed. And it would have been a few years ago when the multi-species sward payment came out. And we oversowed with, I think, red and white clover. And it's still there, which is amazing, actually, because it's still been still there for maybe, 5 years. I know people talk about it dying down, but it's still there. And what's interesting I found as well, and something I did actually try to do this year consciously, was I tried to cut my silage a little bit earlier than we normally would, because I wanted to give it as much regrowth time as possible. And that's paid off as well. Now, I haven't nailed it. It's still a work in progress, but I just think we're going to get hotter summers and we're going to have to adapt.
Yes, yeah, and it really, the other thing, I suppose, the other adaptation people really should be making at this time of the year is, well, not, they should have made it hopefully early in the year, is trying to get all their slurry out early in the spring, because this is not the weather for spreading slurry either. Because if you spread slurry under these conditions, number one, most of the ammonia, which is nitrogen, is going to go up in the air. So you're going to lose a lot of the nutrients that you should be putting down into the soil. And also, it's the capping effect as well. But the big one, and again, I suppose it's the one that's become tricky. What you were talking about there is stitching in. Like, stitching in has become very difficult now for us because, ideally, if you're going to stitch either clover or a little bit of grass seed into your swards, you need rain within a week of doing it.
Mm.
So it looks like at the moment doing it in the months of June and July, even possibly the second half of May, is just becoming a very high risk, because if you hit a period of drought afterwards, you could lose those seeds. So, it's not an expensive method, but still, it's still 60 or 70 euros an acre to do it. So you don't want, for seed alone. So you don't want to be wasting that kind of money. So that's the other thing, I suppose. We're probably looking at going earlier or going later. And then depending where you are in the country, going later can be a risk if you have an early frost. But that's definitely become more difficult for us now, because we used to always say, oh, take a cut of silage in the middle of June and you can stitch
Yeah.
your clover in afterwards. Like, that's just no longer. And
No.
It's not an option every year anyway. And like this is a
Yeah,
typical
I
year
mean,
where you
we
would have
did
just
one
do it.
meadow in the third week of May, and that's the one that's come back lovely with the red and white clover. And then the what we call the long meadow we did in nearly towards the end of the second week of June, and my God, it's like the difference between them. Like I won't be doing a mid-June cut again if I can help it because it's just
And
yeah,
like,
I
and
haven't
this year
helped
we were
it.
lucky, most of us. So it might be.
And it depends where you are. It depends where you are in the country. I was in Mayo last week, and the weather is completely different, and it's lovely and mild and balmy even. Whereas here in Limerick, it feels like we're in the Sahara
And the
Desert at the
same thing,
minute.
I was in Donegal giving courses in Leitrim, giving courses 2 weeks ago, and it was lovely and dry leaving Leitrim, and it was just mist and rain the
Mm.
whole way through Donegal. And even just looking at the weather maps, they're not getting that dry weather um, that we're getting. So, like, it's just the big difference at the moment is we're not even getting a dew in the morning.
Yeah,
It's really dry. Now, that can be good because it means if you put the seed down, it mightn't have germinated. Like the big risk is the dew in the morning will germinate the seed and then there won't be enough moisture just to keep the seed going. But it's just too risky. So, yeah, that's one of the big things we'll have to seriously look about how we do that, how we maybe even manage reseeding on a permanent grassland farm. We probably are moving towards earlier or towards later. And that's something that, you'll have to, in a lot of cases, what I'm saying to farmers, even for stitching in, just buy the bag of clover. If the conditions come right,
yeah,
use it. If the conditions don't come right, just put it in a dry place over the winter and you can wait till next year to do it. It's not hugely expensive to do, but yeah, it's a real tricky one now to get right because we used to get 2 weeks of dry weather, but we're never getting these 4 or 6 weeks of dry weather
mm,
that we seem to be getting now. So I think, yeah, I think people will hopefully the money will come back in the next cap for the red clover multi-species measure because it was very useful to organic farmers. And if that happens, then I think it's something that everyone will have to start thinking about when they're reseeding,
yeah.
is putting in something that's a bit more drought resistant into the
And
mixes.
I guess we've been talking a lot about reseeding and red clover, and people will be wondering how you're finishing all these cattle on your farm that you run with your husband. So how are you doing it?
Well,
Tell
I
us.
suppose, listen, we're lucky because we have a tillage rotation. So we have new grass swards coming in, and therefore that allows us to have really good grass clover silage and really good swards for them. And that's one of the big things really. We've switched in the last few years to Angus bull. That's made things a lot easier, and especially with the spec that's there, that we have to adhere to, like the 250 to 450 kilos. It's very difficult if you have any kind of continental in them. We had one animal out of a Charolais cow, and like she tipped the 450. So you
Yeah.
just can't. You have to. It's something you have to be very careful about, and I think it's 18 cents you lose if you go over that. So,
Which is a lot, but it's a lot per kilo.
it's a
Yeah.
lot per animal. So yeah. So they're the kind of, I suppose they're the things. Definitely switching the Angus plus. You don't have to you don't have to debug them, so that's another job saved. And just definitely having the fresher swards coming in has made that possible because you're offering them really good quality grass all the time. And I know that's not possible for everyone, but if you're in a tillage rotation, it definitely is possible. Listen, the reality is Flavins pay a good price. We make more money from selling our oats down to Flavins than we do putting it into cattle. So,
But you do have to be you have to be realistic in farming as well, and you do have to treat it like a business because at the end of the day, you're the one doing all the hard work, and you deserve to be
yeah.
paid for
And
it.
I think, but even for just the wider organic movement, I think we have to sell that story, that most of the beef is produced off not more than 95% grass,
Mm.
and that we're not importing huge amounts of grain from other countries. I think, it was there when all this trouble over the street, in with fertilizer coming in and with grain coming into the country, like we didn't have to worry about that. We weren't using fertilizer, we weren't buying rations.
Yeah, as organic farmers, it didn't have any impact really on us. No.
There is this, okay, there is, we might be stocked at a lower rate, but we are, that security is there as well, and that we're more self-sufficient. It's one of the things, listen, that we have to think about is why do you stay in sucklers? And the reason we stay in sucklers is that we have much more control over the costs. You're there. Listen, it's very difficult for guys at the moment. Some of the guys paid 850 a kilo for for animals last autumn or there. And like at the moment, I think we're getting 720, 725 in the factory, So it it's just staying in the sucklers. I know the cost of keeping a suckler cow, but it does give you that little bit of independence and that little bit of financial security that you have control over your costs. And I think that that's something that people are thinking about. And I see a few people now out there buying heifers and thinking of that had got out of suckling, but maybe thinking going back suckling again just because of that. Because you're very much at the market's discretion as what you're buying at. You have to pay whatever's out, whatever's the price out there. And
And it is a pity in a way because some people had lovely kind of weanling systems going where they'd buy their few organic weanlings from someone and they'd bring them on, and there was kind of a nice kind of relationship between some suckler farmers, organic suckler farmers who were selling weanlings at a certain point. But I guess it's been a roller coaster the last 18 months in terms of beef prices, and no one could have predicted it. So.
No, and listen, hopefully the thing will steady out now, and that we're still getting a premium for our organic beef, so we're still in a fairly good place. And if we can do that and manage to keep our costs down, that's really what we have under our control.
Yeah.
And that's as much as you can hope to do, is control what you can control within your farm gate. And after that, you'll just have to do your best. And we unfortunately we don't have a lot of choice in where we sell cattle. And even I think for the conventional guys, there isn't a huge difference between going to one factory over the other factory anyway. So, I think the price is where we're at, and it's just trying to make the spec, trying to get the stay your R3s, R4s, don't be keeping them too long, so that they get a higher fat score and that you're being penalised for that as well.
Well, yeah, you'd want to be watching it. If you've paid $8.20 per kilo live weight last year, you'd want to be watching everything very carefully now.
When they go to the factory, like that, they're meeting the spec. And obviously, listen, we haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure in the next few weeks we're going to see a drop in price again as the number of animals on the market increases again. That's generally the way it has gone. It's very hard to know, and I think even the guys in the factory don't, they're not willing to predict what's going to happen either.
And are you all spring calving or all autumn calving?
Mainly spring calving. We don't actually calve until nearly the end of March, early April. We've always calved to try and match grass growth as possible. The aim is either they calve outside, or if they calve inside, they go out very quickly. So just minimizing disease risk, but as much as possible they calve outside. We have a policy here of letting the hedges grow extra tall, so they all have very good shelter. And we find generally if a cow is picked out her spot for calving, we're better off, unless there's trouble, we're better off just to let her there. If we think, like we found since like the switch to, some of the more traditional breeds, like, they pop the calf out, they get up, they suck, you have very little problems with them. So we're lucky enough like that. And again, letting maybe, keeping the cows out beforehand so that they're a bit fitter as well when they calve, definitely, rather than having calving straight out of the shed if we have to put them in. Now last year they were in for last winter was the longest winter we've had in a good while here. They were nearly in the end of October, and it was March before they were out. But at least they were out for a month, and that seems to help with the calving as well.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And I guess the last topic we were going to discuss then is the trials. So we've gone from maybe a very local level to your farm to now we're going to a more national level. So what are the trials and how are they going?
So what we were trialing was using living mulches in organic oat production. So it is putting down a living mulch of clover, of a small leaf white clover, and then sowing the oats directly into that. The idea being that the ground is kept covered all the time, so therefore that's good for the soil biology, and it's also should help for weed suppression because we're not leaving the ground uncovered to allow weeds to come up. It worked great the first year that we did it because we managed to get the winter crop in no bother. Because we didn't use specialized machinery. Last year we decided we would try and use some specialized machinery, some of the stitching in machines. And unfortunately we couldn't get the machine in time. Our window for sowing in the autumn went, and we had to leave it till the spring. And basically we defoliated twice the white clover just to try and make sure that it wouldn't compete too much, and we slot seeded the oat seed into it, but it came up fine, but the clover just overtook it.
Okay.
So it looks like that if it's an option here, it's an option only for winter sowing, and that's possibly what we'll go back to this year. One of the reasons we were trying to switch to winter as well was because just the window in the spring, we're on a heavy clay soil here. We're slightly further west than most people would be for growing oats, just outside Tipperary town. Most of the cereal land is the other side of us, the other side of the town, not our side of the town. And we just found the window in the spring is getting very tight. It was the end of April nearly every year before we were getting to sow, and you were getting one chance to sow. And because we're dependent on contractors, we don't have any machinery ourselves. We just thought switching to the autumn might make it easier. You have a longer window. You have a window maybe to get a little bit of stale seedbed done if you have some weed problems. And then, trying to go the next step then to working into a living mulch just to be more environmentally friendly, more soil friendly, and all that was the plan. But we'll go. I think the plan for the future will be we'll do it in the autumn if the conditions are right. We'll have the clover there. If we don't get to sow in the autumn, then at least the clover keeps the ground covered for the winter months.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a plan there and there's a learning there as well.
And if we don't get a chance, then we'll just plough in the spring. That's that. I think I think we can't be no plough at all. I think, and listen, some of even the min-till conventional guys are accepting now they're ploughing every 5 or 6 years as well. So I think we'll try and reduce the amount of ploughing that we're doing, just because it would be it's we're releasing less carbon. It's more environmentally friendly, but also thinking about the soil health and thinking about the weed management as well long term. And a lot of people, you do have what they call the honeymoon period for the first 5 or 6 years when
Yeah.
you do go into tillage. We were 100% organic. We were organic for over 30 years here. We were 100% grassland for the first 15 of that, and probably for the last 15 we've had since the first call by Flavins for grassland farmers to think about growing oats. We've started growing more and more oats as well. And but yeah, we're over the honeymoon period now, so weed pressure is a bit more, and it's trying to, and we're not, again, because we're not real tillage people, and we're not, our soil is that big clay for us to go in and harrow after sowing. Sometimes we just don't get the windows here. We'll just smear the soil and we'll do more damage than good. So you kind of have to think about that as well. So I always say to farmers, just because we do something doesn't mean, or you go to a farm walk
Yeah.
and somebody's doing something, it doesn't mean it's going to suit your farm.
Yeah.
Like as I was saying to you, I was out in Belgium during last week, and like the soils are so sandy, and just like they were talking about organic matters of less than 5, like, and if we had less than 8, we'd be, and we saw dust clouds in some of
Yeah.
the field. So like that would be unheard of here. So you have to look at what you have yourself and what suits you. And sometimes, going for the extra quarter of a ton or something it might cost you more than it's worth. So for us, it's keeping the system simple. We had read, there's a lot of this going on in the UK with the innovation farmers group over there. And listen, we probably have found what they found, that it's more difficult. And it is, listen, oats is not the ideal crop to be doing with it because it covers in so quickly as well. But listen, oats is what we have a market for in Ireland. So we're going to be growing oats until here full, like we only grow oats. We've tried other crops, but the market is the problem.
Okay.
And we're not set up to grow, combination crop and sell it to other organic farmers. That's just a whole extra infrastructure we'd have to have in the yard, and we're just not willing to invest in that at the moment. We want to keep the system simple for as we can, and that's what's working for us. So that's our experiment with the oats. It's a bit of a disaster this year, but hopefully and we're lucky we have had funding from the Socrates project that's run out of Toos in Limerick, and that'll cushion the blow for us a good bit. And in fairness to them, they'll be doing some soil work on, like looking at the organic matter, looking at the carbon, looking at all that. So the soil is probably going to be better. We're not having grown a crop of oats in it, so the soil is probably happier. But so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like as well. What they're
Yeah.
because they're doing a lot of soil work. and because that's their expertise, and that'll be interesting as well as the farmer side of it.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to come back, I guess, in time and see where you're at with it. But Mary, that's fascinating. Thank you very much. As always, I should say, because every time I have you on, I learn something new myself. So it's great to have you. Thank you very much. Do you have any closing words you want to give us before we finish up?
No, just enjoy the sunshine if you can. I suppose. Believe it or not, it'll be raining before we know it. And listen, it's a very positive year. Most of us have plenty of silage. A lot of us have a nice bit of hay in the barn as well, which is always a lovely thing to have going into winter. And that kind of security is really important as an organic farmer,
Yeah.
because, we don't know what next spring is going to bring. So having enough, silage or hay made in your yard that'll get you through till maybe even next April if we had a bad spring is a really good insurance policy to have going into the winter. So I think it should be very positive for us going into the winter now, and that's kind of the middle of July to be at that stage where you've all your silage made and you have some hay made as well. It's a good place to be.
It's basically money in the bank. Yeah. Mary, thank you very much for being on with us. And for anyone who is listening, you've been listening to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. For more on organics, you can go to www.irishorganicassociation.ie. But for me, Hannah Quinn Mulligan, thank you very much. And we'll be back again in another 2 weeks with another podcast.